The telegram had arrived 3 weeks ago, and Regina Ellsworth still carried it folded in her reticule as the stagecoach rattled through the dusty streets of Dalhart, Texas, on this sweltering afternoon in late June of 1878. She had answered Sheriff Marcus Thompson's advertisement for a bride with equal parts desperation and hope, fleeing a life of poverty in Boston where her only prospects had been factory work or worse. Now, as the coach slowed to a stop outside the general store, her heart hammered against her ribcage so hard she feared the elderly woman sitting beside her could hear it. Regina smoothed her worn traveling dress and peered through the dust-caked window at the small frontier town. Wooden buildings lined a wide dirt street, their false fronts promising more grandeur than they delivered. Cowboys lounged on the boardwalk, their spurs glinting in the harsh sunlight. She took a steadying breath and gathered her carpetbag as the driver opened the door. The heat hit her like a physical force when she stepped down from the coach. Boston had been warm, but this Texas sun felt like standing too close to an oven. She shaded her eyes and looked around, searching for a man who fit the description Sheriff Thompson had provided: tall, distinguished in his early 40s with graying hair. "Miss Ellsworth," a voice called from behind her. Regina turned and felt her breath catch. The man approaching was not the sheriff. He was young, perhaps 25 at most, with sun-bronzed skin and the kind of build that came from hard physical labor. His deputy's badge caught the light as he removed his hat, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at the ends. His eyes were an unusual shade of green, startling against his tanned face. "Yes, I am Regina Ellsworth," she managed, trying not to stare. "Grayson Turner, deputy here in Dalhart. Sheriff Thompson asked me to meet you. He got called away on urgent business over in Amarillo. Won't be back for a few days." The deputy's voice was warm, tinged with what she was learning to recognize as a Texas drawl. "He arranged for you to stay at the boarding house until he returns. Mrs. Patterson runs a respectable establishment." Disappointment and relief warred within her. She had steeled herself to meet her future husband, and now she had a reprieve. But she had also traveled nearly 2,000 miles, spending the last of her meager savings, and the man she was supposed to marry had not even bothered to be here. Grayson Turner must have seen something in her expression because his own softened. "I know it is not what you expected, miss." The sheriff truly had no choice. There was a stage robbery, and the Rangers needed his help tracking the outlaws. "He left word that he was sorry and looks forward to meeting you when he returns." "I see," Regina said, lifting her chin. She would not show how unsettled she felt, how far from home and uncertain. "Thank you for coming to meet me, Deputy Turner. Please call me Grayson." "Here, let me get your trunk." He moved to help the driver unload her battered trunk from the top of the coach. Regina watched him work, noting the easy strength in his movements, the way he handled her heavy trunk as though it weighed nothing at all. When he hoisted it onto his shoulder, she picked up her carpetbag. "The boarding house is just down the street," he said. "Not far." They walked side by side along the wooden boardwalk, and Regina was acutely aware of the curious stares from the townspeople. A woman sweeping her porch stopped to watch them pass. Two men loading supplies onto a wagon paused in their work. Regina supposed a new woman arriving was noteworthy in such a small town. "How long have you been in Dalhart, deputy?" she asked, partly to distract herself from the scrutiny. "Grayson, please," he reminded her with a slight smile. "About 3 years now. Came out from Missouri after the war ended and things were so unsettled back home. My parents had passed and I had nothing keeping me there. Headed west and found this place suited me." "The war," Regina repeated quietly. "You must have been very young." "Young enough," he agreed. Served the last year, lied about my age to enlist, but that is all behind us now. What about you? Boston is a long way from Texas. A very long way, Regina said. But there was nothing left for me there either. My parents died of influenza 2 years ago. I had been working in a textile mill, but the wages barely kept me fed. When I saw the sheriff's advertisement in the matrimonial news, it seemed like providence. Grayson glanced at her, and she thought she saw sympathy in those green eyes. Took courage to come all this way to marry a man you have never met. Or desperation, Regina said before she could stop herself. Then she flushed. Forgive me. That sounded ungrateful. Sheriff Thompson seems like a fine man from his letters. He is a good man, Grayson said carefully. Fair, honest, respected in town. You could do worse. There was something in his tone that made Regina look at him more closely, but his expression gave nothing away. They had reached a 2-story house with a sign reading Patterson Boarding House hanging from the porch rail. Grayson climbed the steps and knocked. The door opened to reveal a plump woman in her 50s with graying blonde hair and a kind face. Oh good, you found her, Grayson. Come in, dear. You must be exhausted from your journey. I am Adelaide Patterson. Regina Ellsworth. Thank you for having me. Nonsense, the pleasure is mine. We do not get many ladies passing through Dalhart. Your room is all ready. Grayson, be a dear and bring that trunk upstairs. Second door on the right. Regina followed Mrs. Patterson into a clean, simply furnished front room. The boarding house smelled of bread and lavender, and despite everything, Regina felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. Now then, Mrs. Patterson said, once Grayson had deposited the trunk in Regina's room and excused himself. Let me show you around and explain how things work here. Breakfast is at 7, supper at 6. I provide both meals with your room. There is a bathing room at the end of the hall, though you will need to give me notice if you want hot water so I can heat it. Church is Sunday mornings if you are inclined. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. This is very kind. The older woman patted her hand. Adelaide, please. And it is no trouble at all, I must say. I was surprised when Marcus said he had sent for a bride. He has been alone since his wife passed 5 years ago. We all thought he would stay a bachelor. Regina's eyebrows rose. I did not know he had been married before. Oh yes, to Dorothy, sweet woman. She died giving birth to their daughter, and the baby died too. Marcus took it very hard, but I suppose he is ready to move forward now, and you seem like a lovely girl. How old are you, dear? 22, Regina said. Adelaide nodded approvingly. A good age. You will do well here, I think. Now you must be famished. Let me fix you a plate. That evening, Regina sat on the narrow bed in her room and unpacked her few belongings. 2 other dresses, both as worn as the one she wore, some undergarments, a silver hairbrush that had been her mother's, a small Bible, a daguerreotype of her parents on their wedding day. She picked up the photograph and studied their young faces. Her mother had been only 19 when she married, her father 21. They had loved each other deeply, and that love had sustained them through poverty and hardship until illness claimed them both. Regina had always assumed she would marry for love too, but life had other plans. She thought of Sheriff Marcus Thompson, who was a stranger to her despite their exchanged letters. He had been courteous and honest in his correspondence, explaining that he needed a wife to help manage his household and possibly give him children. In return, he offered security, a home, and respect. It was more than many women had, Regina reminded herself. She should be grateful. But when she closed her eyes, the face that appeared in her mind was not the one she imagined belonged to the sheriff. Instead, she saw green eyes and a warm smile, sun-bronzed skin and strong hands lifting her trunk as though it weighed nothing. Regina shook her head sharply. She was being foolish. Deputy Grayson Turner had simply been kind to her, nothing more. She was promised to Sheriff Thompson, and she would honor that commitment. She had come too far and given up too much to let her head be turned by a handsome face. She changed into her nightgown and crawled into bed, but sleep was slow to come. Through the open window, she could hear the sounds of Dalhart settling in for the night. Distant laughter from a saloon, the whinny of horses, boots on wooden boardwalks. This was her home now, for better or worse. Morning came with bright sunlight streaming through the thin curtains. Regina washed her face in the basin on the dresser and dressed in her second-best dress, a faded blue cotton that had seen better days. She brushed her auburn hair and pinned it up, studying herself in the small mirror. She looked tired, she thought, shadows under her hazel eyes from restless sleep. Downstairs, Adelaide had prepared a breakfast of eggs, biscuits, and thick slabs of bacon. 2 other boarders were already eating. An older gentleman Adelaide introduced as Mr. Henderson, who worked at the land office, and a traveling salesman named Mr. Petty who would be leaving that morning. "What will you do with yourself while you wait for Marcus to return?" Adelaide asked as she refilled Regina's coffee. "I am not sure," Regina admitted. "I suppose I should familiarize myself with the town." "Grayson offered to show you around if you would like," Adelaide said with a knowing smile. "He stopped by earlier this morning and said to let you know he would be available this afternoon if you wanted a tour." Regina felt her cheeks warm. "That is very kind of him, but I would not want to take him from his duties." "Oh, he can spare an hour or two." "Things are quiet with Marcus gone anyway. I think it would do you good to get your bearings. You should see where the general store is, the church, the doctor's office, all the important places." So that was how Regina found herself walking down Main Street that afternoon with Grayson Turner at her side, the deputy pointing out the various establishments as they went. "That is the saloon," he said, gesturing to a building with swinging doors and the sound of piano music drifting out. "The Golden Nugget, not a place for ladies, though it is relatively tame as such places go. Charlie, the owner, runs a clean operation. No gambling or fighting if he can help it." "You spend much time there?" Regina asked, then immediately regretted the question. It was too personal, too familiar, but Grayson did not seem to mind. "Not much. I will have a beer now and then, but I prefer to keep a clear head, part of the job." They continued down the street. He showed her the general store run by a couple named Sarah and Thomas Fletcher. The doctor's office, though Dr. Morrison was out on a house call. The small schoolhouse where Miss Emily Carter taught about 15 children of various ages. The church, a simple white building with a cross on top. "We have a circuit preacher who comes through twice a month," Grayson explained. "Reverend Walsh. Nice fellow, though he does go on a bit. We also have a small Catholic church on the edge of town for the Mexican families who work at the ranches." "It seems like a good town," Regina said. "Close-knit." "It is. Everyone knows everyone, which can be good and bad. Privacy is hard to come by, but folks help each other when needed. Last winter, when the snow came heavy, we all pitched in to make sure the widows and elderly had firewood and food." They had reached the end of the main street, and Grayson paused near a small house set back from the road. "That is Marcus's place, your future home." Regina studied the house. It was modest but well-maintained, with a covered porch and flower boxes in the windows, though the flowers had clearly been neglected and were mostly brown stalks now. "His late wife planted those," Grayson said quietly. "He could never bring himself to pull them out, but he does not have the heart to tend them either." "That is very sad," Regina said, and meant it. She felt a pang of sympathy for the man she was to marry, nursing his grief alone in that quiet house. "He has had a hard time of it," Grayson agreed. "But he is a good man, Regina. A bit set in his ways, serious but good. He will treat you well." She looked at the deputy, trying to read his expression. "You keep saying that. Are you trying to convince me or yourself?" Grayson met her eyes, and for a moment, something passed between them, something electric and unspoken. Then he looked away. "Just want you to know what you are getting into is all. Marcus is 20 years older than you. He is looking for a wife to keep his house and maybe give him children. It will be a practical arrangement." "I knew that when I agreed to come," Regina said, lifting her chin. "I am not expecting a fairy tale, Deputy Turner." "Grayson," he corrected automatically. Then, softer, "No, I suppose you are not. Life does not offer many of us fairy tales, does it?" There was a bleakness in his tone that surprised her. "Were you ever married, Grayson?" "No. Came close once back in Missouri before the war, but she married someone else while I was away fighting. Got a letter from her saying she could not wait any longer, that she needed security I could not provide. Cannot blame her, really. War does not make for reliable husbands." "I am sorry," Regina said. He shrugged. "Long time ago now. Come on, let me show you the creek. It is a nice spot, peaceful. Sometimes I go there to think." They walked beyond the edge of town, following a worn path through scrub grass and mesquite trees. The creek was more of a stream, really, cutting through red dirt banks, but it was lined with cottonwood trees that provided shade. The sound of water over rocks was soothing after the dusty heat of town. Regina sat on a large, flat rock near the water's edge, and Grayson settled onto the ground nearby, picking up a pebble and tossing it into the current. "Thank you for being so kind to me," Regina said. "You did not have to take time to show me around." "I wanted to," Grayson said simply. He looked at her, and again she felt that strange pull, that awareness. "I know this cannot be easy for you, coming to a strange place to marry a stranger. I wanted you to feel welcome, at least." "You have succeeded," Regina said softly. "I do feel welcome." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the creek and the rustle of leaves in the slight breeze. A bird called somewhere overhead. Regina found herself relaxing in a way she had not since leaving Boston. "What made you answer Marcus's advertisement?" Grayson asked eventually. "If you do not mind me asking." Regina considered how much to tell him, but there was something about Grayson that invited confidence, a genuine interest that made her want to share. "Desperation, mostly," she admitted. "After my parents died, I was alone. I had no other family, no prospects. The mill work was grinding me down, and the foreman was starting to make unwanted advances. I knew if I stayed, I would end up either married to some drunken factory worker who would beat me or working in a brothel. When I saw Sheriff Thompson's advertisement, it seemed like an escape, a chance at something better, even if it was not love." "And what do you want, Regina? If you could have anything—" No one had ever asked her that before. Regina found herself answering honestly. "I want a home. A real home with people who care about me. I want children, a family. I want to feel safe and valued. I want to matter to someone." Grayson was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "You deserve all of that. You deserve someone who looks at you and sees how remarkable you are." Regina's heart skipped. She turned to find Grayson watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. The air between them felt charged, heavy with possibility. "Grayson," she whispered, not sure what she was asking. He stood abruptly, putting distance between them. "We should head back. It will be supper time soon, and Adelaide does not like folks being late." The moment shattered. Regina rose, smoothing her skirts, trying to calm her racing pulse. They walked back to town in silence, but it was no longer comfortable. It was fraught with unspoken words and unacknowledged feelings. At the boarding house, Grayson tipped his hat. "Thank you for allowing me to show you around, Miss Ellsworth." The return to formality stung. "Thank you for your time, Deputy Turner. She went inside without looking back, but she felt his gaze on her until she closed the door. The next 3 days passed in a strange limbo. Regina helped Adelaide around the boarding house, learning to cook Texas-style meals and getting to know the rhythms of the small town. She attended church on Sunday and met more of the townspeople, who were uniformly friendly and curious about the sheriff's mail-order bride. She saw Grayson around town, of course. Dalhart was too small to avoid anyone. He always tipped his hat politely, asked how she was settling in, but he kept his distance. Regina told herself she was relieved. She told herself it was better this way. She almost believed it. On Monday afternoon, Adelaide sent her to the general store for flour and sugar. Sarah Fletcher, the shopkeeper's wife, was a cheerful woman in her 30s who chatted easily as she measured out the supplies. "It is good to see Marcus finally moving on," Sarah said. "He has been alone too long. And you seem like a sweet girl. I am sure you two will do well together." "I hope so," Regina said, though doubt gnawed at her. "Oh, I am sure of it. Marcus needs someone to soften him up a bit. He has become so stern since Dorothy died. Used to smile more, laugh more. Maybe you can bring that back." Regina was forming a response when the door burst open and Grayson strode in, his face tight with concern. "Sarah, have you seen Tommy? His mother is looking for him." "Not since this morning. Is something wrong?" "He was supposed to be home an hour ago and no one has seen him. Susan is worried." Sarah frowned. "That boy, probably off exploring near the old mine again. I have told him it is dangerous." Grayson's expression darkened. "The abandoned silver mine north of town. That is the one. He and some of the other boys like to play there, despite their parents telling them not to." Grayson cursed under his breath. "That mine has unstable shafts. If he has gone in there." He was already turning to leave when Regina found herself speaking. "I can help look for him." Both Grayson and Sarah looked at her in surprise. "You do not know the area," Grayson said. "Then show me. 2 pairs of eyes are better than 1, and you said the mine is dangerous. You might need help if he is hurt." Grayson hesitated, then nodded sharply. "All right. But stay close to me and do exactly as I say." "Understood." "Understood." They hurried to the livery stable, where Grayson saddled 2 horses with practiced efficiency. Regina had ridden before, though not often, and she accepted his help mounting with what she hoped was grace. Then they were riding out of town at a brisk pace, heading north toward a range of low, scrubby hills. The abandoned mine was about 30 minutes from town, a collection of old wooden structures and yawning holes in the earth, remnants of a silver strike that had played out years ago. Warning signs had been posted, but as Grayson and Regina approached, they could see where someone small had clearly ducked under the rope barrier. "Tommy," Grayson called. "Tommy Jenkins, are you here?" Silence, except for the wind whistling through the old boards. They dismounted and Grayson pulled a lantern from his saddlebag, lighting it. "Stay right behind me," he said to Regina. "Watch where you step. Some of these boards are rotten." They moved carefully through the site, checking the smaller shafts and calling Tommy's name. It was Regina who heard it, a faint cry coming from what looked like the largest mine entrance. "Grayson, there." They rushed to the entrance and Grayson held the lantern high. About 20 feet down the sloping shaft, they could see a small figure hunched against the wall. "Deputy Turner." A frightened young voice called, "I am stuck. I cannot get my leg free." "Hold on, Tommy. We are coming to get you." Grayson handed the lantern to Regina. "Stay here and keep the light steady so I can see." He started down into the mine, moving carefully, testing each foothold. Regina watched anxiously, holding the lantern as steady as she could despite her trembling hands. Dust motes danced in the light beam. Grayson reached Tommy and crouched beside the boy, examining his leg. From where Regina stood, She could hear their conversation. "Looks like your foot is wedged between two rocks," Grayson said. "We are going to have to move one of them. It is going to hurt when your leg comes free, but I need you to be brave, all right?" "Yes, sir," Tommy said, his voice shaking. Regina heard scrabbling sounds, then a grunt of effort from Grayson. Tommy cried out, and then Grayson was saying, "Got it. Can you stand?" "I think so." "My ankle hurts real bad. Probably sprained. Put your arm around my shoulders. I am going to help you up." They made their way slowly back up the slope, Tommy hobbling with Grayson supporting most of his weight. When they emerged into the sunlight, Regina could see that the boy's face was streaked with tears and dirt, but he was trying valiantly not to cry. "You are very brave, Tommy," she said, setting down the lantern and pulling out her handkerchief to wipe his face. "I am sorry," Tommy whispered. "I did not mean to cause trouble. I was just looking for interesting rocks, and I saw something shiny down there and I went to get it, and then my foot got stuck, and I was scared the mine would collapse and no one would find me." "Well, we found you," Grayson said firmly. "But your mother is going to tan your hide for disobeying her, and rightfully so. These mines are dangerous, Tommy. You could have been killed." "I know. I am sorry." They got Tommy onto Grayson's horse and Grayson swung up behind him. Regina mounted the other horse and they made their way back to town. Tommy's mother, Susan, came running when she saw them, her face a mixture of relief and fury. "Thomas Andrew Jenkins, you are in so much trouble." But she was also crying as she pulled him into her arms, checking him over for injuries. Her husband, Robert, arrived moments later and carried the boy to Dr. Morrison's office to have his ankle wrapped. "Thank you," Susan said to Grayson and Regina, wiping her eyes. "Thank you both so much. If anything had happened to him." "He is a good kid," Grayson said. "Just made a bad decision. Make sure he learns from it." As they walked the horses back to the livery, Grayson looked at Regina with something like admiration. That was quick thinking, hearing him call out. "And brave, offering to come with me." "I could not just stand by when a child was in danger," Regina said. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Grayson said quietly. "Not everyone. You have a good heart, Regina Ellsworth." She felt herself flush with pleasure at the praise. They returned the horses and walked back toward the boarding house. It was early evening now, the sky turning gold and pink as the sun lowered. "Grayson," Regina said as they reached Adelaide's front steps, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you really offer to show me around when I arrived? And why do you keep your distance now?" He was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Then he said, "Because Marcus asked me to look after you until he returned. And because I keep my distance now for the same reason I should not have offered in the first place. You are promised to Marcus. He is my friend and my superior. It would not be right for me to." He trailed off, not finishing the thought. "To what?" Regina pressed, her heart pounding. Grayson looked at her, and the naked longing in his eyes made her breath stop. "To want you the way I do," he said roughly. "To think about you every waking moment. To wish that you had come to Dalhart for me instead of him." The world seemed to tilt. Regina reached out and gripped the porch railing for support. "Grayson." "I should not have said that," he said quickly. "Forgive me, I was out of line. You are an engaged woman and I had no right." "I am not engaged yet," Regina heard herself say. "I have not even met Sheriff Thompson." "But you came here for him. You made a commitment." "I made a practical arrangement," Regina said. "And yes, I intend to honor it, but I cannot pretend that I do not feel." She paused, gathering her courage. "That I do not feel something when I am with you, something I have never felt before." Grayson closed his eyes as if in pain. "Regina, this cannot happen. Even if we both want it, it cannot happen. Marcus is a good man. He deserves better than being betrayed by his deputy and his intended bride." And you deserve better than the scandal that would follow if you broke your word to marry him and ran off with me instead. This town would never forgive you, never accept you. Your life would be hell." "So what do we do?" Regina whispered. "We do the right thing," Grayson said, opening his eyes. The green was dark with sorrow. "I will keep my distance, and you will marry Marcus as planned. He will be a good husband to you, Regina. He will give you the home and security you came here for, and in time maybe these feelings will fade. And if they do not?" "Then we bear it," Grayson said simply. "Because that is what decent people do. They honor their commitments even when it is hard." He tipped his hat and walked away, his shoulders rigid. Regina stood on the porch and watched him go, tears streaming silently down her face. Adelaide found her there a few minutes later. The older woman took one look at Regina's face and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Oh, honey, come inside." Over tea in Adelaide's private sitting room, Regina found herself pouring out the whole story. Her growing feelings for Grayson, his confession, the impossibility of their situation. Adelaide listened without judgment, occasionally patting Regina's hand. When Regina finished, the older woman sighed. "I knew this would happen," Adelaide said. "The moment I saw you two together, I knew. You are both young and lonely, and there is a natural attraction, but Grayson is right, dear. You have made a commitment to Marcus, and breaking it would cause nothing but pain all around." "I know," Regina said miserably. "But how do I marry one man when I have feelings for another?" "The same way countless women have done throughout history," Adelaide said gently. "You put those feelings aside and you build a life with your husband. Feelings change, Regina. Attraction fades. What matters is commitment, partnership, respect. Those things last. Marcus can give you those things." "But what about love?" Regina asked. "Love can grow," Adelaide said. "It does not always strike like lightning. Sometimes it builds slowly over years of shared life. Give Marcus a chance. Give yourself a chance to know him. You might be surprised." Regina wanted to believe her. She tried to believe her. But that night, lying in her narrow bed, all she could think about was green eyes and a rough voice saying, "I want you." Sheriff Marcus Thompson returned to Dalhart 3 days later, riding in at midday with 2 other rangers, the outlaws they had been tracking in custody. Regina watched from the window of the boarding house as they made their way to the jail. Even from a distance, she could see that Marcus was a commanding figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with an air of authority. An hour later, Adelaide sent word that the sheriff would call on Regina that evening after he had cleaned up and dealt with the prisoners. Regina spent the afternoon in a state of nervous anticipation, changing dresses twice before settling on her best one, a green calico that brought out the color of her eyes. When the knock came at 7 o'clock, Adelaide ushered Sheriff Marcus Thompson into the boarding house parlor. Regina stood, smoothing her skirts, and got her first good look at the man she had traveled across the country to marry. He was indeed tall, well over 6 feet, with a powerful build that suggested strength and capability. His hair was dark brown shot through with gray, and his face was weathered and lined. He had kind brown eyes and a strong jaw, and he wore his authority comfortably. He was handsome in a mature, distinguished way. He was also old enough to be her father. "Miss Ellsworth," he said, removing his hat and bowing slightly. "I apologize for not being here when you arrived. It could not be helped, but I regret any distress my absence caused." His voice was deep and pleasant, educated. Regina curtsied. "Sheriff Thompson, I understand." Deputy Turner explained about the outlaws. Marcus smiled, and it softened his stern features. "Grayson has been looking after you then? Good. He is a reliable man." He paused. "Would you take a walk with me? I thought we might talk and get to know each other a bit." "Of course." They walked through town in the cooling evening air. Marcus pointed out various landmarks, much as Grayson had done, but there was a fundamental difference. Where Grayson's tour had felt personal and warm, Marcus's felt dutiful and formal. "I want to be honest with you about what I am offering," Marcus said as they reached his house. "I am not a romantic man, Miss Ellsworth. My first marriage was born of love, and losing Dorothy nearly destroyed me. I am not looking to repeat that experience. What I need is a practical partner, someone to help manage my household, present a proper image for a man in my position, and possibly bear children. In return, I offer security, respect, and a comfortable home. I will never mistreat you or raise a hand to you. I will provide for you and any children we may have. Does that seem acceptable?" It was everything he had promised in his letters, and yet hearing it stated so baldly, so unromantically, made Regina's heart sink. But what had she expected? She knew what this arrangement was when she agreed to it. "It seems acceptable," she said quietly. Marcus nodded, satisfied. "Good. I propose we marry this Sunday after church. That gives us both a few days to prepare and you to be certain this is what you want. If you decide you would prefer to return to Boston, I will understand and provide funds for your journey. But if you choose to stay and become my wife, I will expect you to honor that commitment." "I understand." They walked back to the boarding house, and Marcus bid her good night with another formal bow. Regina went inside feeling hollowed out and lost. Over the next few days, the town buzzed with preparations for the wedding. Sarah Fletcher helped Regina purchase fabric for a simple wedding dress, which Adelaide helped her sew. The women of the town donated what they could: lace for the veil, flowers for a bouquet, a tablecloth for the wedding supper Marcus planned to host at his home. Regina went through the motions in a daze. She spoke with Marcus twice more, stilted conversations where they discussed practical matters like her duties as his wife and his expectations. He was unfailingly polite but distant, treating her more like a business arrangement than a future bride. She did not see Grayson at all. He seemed to have made himself scarce, and Regina told herself it was for the best even as she looked for him everywhere she went. Saturday afternoon, the day before the wedding, Regina could not bear the confinement of the boarding house any longer. She told Adelaide she needed a walk and headed out of town toward the creek, the one place she had felt at peace since arriving in Dalhart. She sat on the same flat rock where she had sat with Grayson, listening to the water and trying to reconcile herself to her fate. She would marry Marcus Thompson tomorrow. She would become his wife, share his bed, bear his children if she could. She would build a life here in Dalhart, and perhaps in time she would even be content. But she would never know the kind of love her parents had shared. She would never know what it felt like to be truly cherished. "I thought I might find you here." Regina spun around to find Grayson standing a few feet away. He looked haggard, as though he had not been sleeping well. Her heart leaped at the sight of him, and she had to force herself to stay seated to not run to him. "Grayson, I thought you were avoiding me." "I was. I am." He moved closer, dropping onto the ground near her rock. "But I could not let you marry Marcus tomorrow without talking to you one more time." "What is there to say?" Regina asked, hating how her voice trembled. "That I am sorry," Grayson said. "Sorry that I met you too late. Sorry that you came here for him and not for me. Sorry that I do not have more to offer you than a deputy's salary and a rented room above the jail. Sorry that I am not brave enough to ask you to choose me anyway." Regina felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "Grayson, please, this is hard enough." "I know." He looked up at her, and his own eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I just needed you to know that if circumstances were different, if you had come to Dalhart free and unattached, I would have courted you properly. I would have done everything in my power to win your heart." and I would have spent the rest of my life making sure you never regretted choosing me." "I think I would have chosen you," Regina whispered. "I think from the moment I met you, some part of me already had." Grayson stood and took her hands, pulling her to her feet. They stood close enough that Regina could feel the heat of his body, smell the soap and leather scent of him. His thumbs traced circles on her wrists, and the simple touch sent fire through her veins. "We could leave," he said suddenly, urgently. "Right now. I have money saved. We could go to California, start fresh where no one knows us. We could be together, Regina. We could have the life we both want." For one wild, desperate moment, Regina was tempted. She imagined it, riding away from Dalhart with Grayson, leaving everything behind, building a new life based on love instead of practicality. But then reality crashed back. And live with the knowledge that we betrayed a good man, that we broke vows and fled like thieves in the night. "Grayson, that guilt would poison anything we tried to build together. You know it would." His hands tightened on hers. "I know, I just had to offer. I had to know I tried." "I am honored that you would offer," Regina said, "but you were right the first time. We have to do the right thing, even when it hurts." They stood there for a long moment, hands clasped, memorizing each other. Then Grayson slowly, carefully, raised one of her hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles. It was the first and only time he had kissed any part of her, and Regina felt the touch like a brand. "Be happy," he said hoarsely. "Promise me you will try to be happy." "I promise," Regina whispered, though she did not know if it was a lie. Grayson released her hands and stepped back. "I should go. I will see you tomorrow at the church." He walked away without looking back, and Regina sank down onto the rock and wept until she had no tears left. The morning of her wedding dawned bright and clear. Adelaide helped Regina dress in the pale blue dress they had sewn, simple but pretty. Regina's hair was arranged in a soft chignon with small white flowers tucked into the curls. Looking at herself in the mirror, she thought she looked like a bride, even if she did not feel like one. The church was full when she arrived. It seemed the whole town had turned out for the sheriff's wedding. Regina walked down the aisle alone, clutching her bouquet of wildflowers, her eyes fixed on Marcus standing at the altar in his best suit. Reverend Walsh was officiating, and he beamed at her as she took her place beside Marcus. The service began, and Regina heard herself making the responses automatically, her voice steady even though her heart was breaking. She did not look for Grayson in the congregation. She could not bear to see his face. "Do you, Regina Elizabeth Ellsworth, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" This was it. Her last chance to speak, to object, to run. Regina opened her mouth to say "I do" and found she could not force the words out. The silence stretched. People began to shift uncomfortably. Marcus frowned. Reverend Walsh looked concerned, and then from the back of the church came a commotion. The doors burst open and a young boy ran in, breathless and frightened. "Sheriff, Deputy, the bank is being robbed. They have got guns." The church erupted into chaos. Marcus immediately went into sheriff mode, barking orders. "Grayson with me." "Reverend, keep everyone here until we sound the all clear." Regina watched Marcus and Grayson run from the church, along with several other men. The women gathered in frightened clusters, whispering and praying. Regina stood frozen at the altar, still holding her bouquet. Adelaide came to her side. "Come, dear. Let us wait with the others." But Regina could not move. All she could think about was Grayson running toward danger, possibly running toward his death, and the last real words she had said to him were a goodbye at the creek. Minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Then came the sound of gunshots, sharp and terrifying. Women screamed, Children cried. Regina dropped her bouquet and pushed toward the door. "Regina, no," Adelaide called, but Regina was already running. She burst out of the church and into chaos. Smoke hung in the air. People were running. More gunshots cracked through the afternoon. Regina ran toward the bank, her wedding dress dragging in the dirt. She had to know if Grayson was all right. Nothing else mattered. She rounded the corner and saw it. 4 men on horseback, shooting as they tried to flee. Marcus and Grayson taking cover behind water troughs and posts, returning fire. One of the robbers aimed his rifle at Grayson. "No," Regina screamed. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. The robber's finger on the trigger, Grayson's head turning toward the sound of her voice. Marcus diving forward, pushing Grayson aside just as the rifle fired. The bullet caught Marcus in the chest. He fell heavily, blood blooming across his white wedding shirt. Grayson shot the man who had fired, and the outlaw tumbled from his horse. The other robbers, seeing their companion fall and more armed townsmen arriving, spurred their horses and fled. But Regina barely registered any of it. She was running to where Marcus had fallen, Grayson already kneeling beside him. "Get Doc Morrison," Grayson shouted to the gathered crowd. Someone ran. Regina dropped to her knees beside them. Marcus was conscious, his breathing labored, his hand pressed to the wound in his chest. Blood seeped between his fingers. "Marcus," Regina said, her voice breaking. "Hold on, the doctor is coming." Marcus's eyes found hers. He tried to smile. "Well, this is not how I planned our wedding day to go." "Do not talk," Grayson said urgently, pressing his own hands over Marcus's to try to slow the bleeding. "Save your strength." But Marcus shook his head slightly. "Grayson, I know." "Know what? Marcus, stay with us. I know how you feel about her, how she feels about you. I have seen it." Marcus coughed and blood flecked his lips. "I should have let you have her, should have stepped aside." "Stop talking like that," Grayson said desperately. "You are going to be fine." "No, I am not." Marcus's breathing was getting shallower. He looked at Regina again. "I am sorry. Should have known better than to try to replace Dorothy. Not fair to you, not fair to anyone." Tears streamed down Regina's face. "Please, please hold on." "Take care of him," Marcus said to Regina, his voice barely a whisper now. "Grayson. He is a good man, better than me. Love him, be happy." "Marcus, no," Grayson's voice cracked, but Marcus's eyes were already glazing over. His hand fell away from his chest. His last breath rattled out, and then he was still. "No," Grayson said again, this time in a broken whisper. He bent his head over Marcus's body, his shoulders shaking. Regina sat frozen in shock and horror. This man, who had done nothing but try to build a new life for himself, who had just saved Grayson's life, was dead. Dead in his wedding clothes, dead before they could even speak their vows, dead because Regina had screamed and distracted Grayson at the crucial moment. This was her fault. Doc Morrison arrived, but there was nothing he could do except confirm what they already knew. The townsmen returned shortly after with 2 of the robbers dead and the other 2 captured. No one else had been hurt besides Marcus. Grayson stood slowly, Marcus's blood covering his hands and shirt. His face was white, his eyes devastated. He looked at Regina for one long moment, and she saw the accusation there, whether real or imagined. Then he turned and walked away. The funeral was held 2 days later. The entire town attended, grief-stricken over the loss of their sheriff. Marcus was buried in the cemetery next to his first wife, Dorothy, as he had requested in his will. Regina stood at the graveside in a black dress Adelaide had found for her, numb with shock and guilt. She had not seen Grayson since the shooting. He had not come to the boarding house, had not sought her out, had avoided her completely. After the service, as people were departing, Regina finally spotted him standing alone by a large oak tree at the edge of the cemetery. She made her way to him, her heart in her throat. "Grayson," she said quietly. He looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was unbearable. "Regina." "I am so sorry," she whispered. "If I had not screamed, if I had not distracted you, he would not have had to save you. He would still be alive." "No," Grayson said firmly. "No, Regina. This is not your fault. You were frightened and worried. Marcus made his choice. He saw that rifle aimed at me, and he chose to push me out of the way. He died a hero, saving my life. But if we had not had feelings for each other, if we had not put him in that position, then he would have married you, and you would be a widow now anyway," Grayson said. "The outcome would have been the same. Those robbers would have come regardless. The shooting would have happened regardless. The only difference is that Marcus recognized what was between us, and his last act was to give us his blessing." "Some blessing," Regina said bitterly. "Built on his death, I know." Grayson looked back toward Marcus's grave. "I have been thinking about what he said. About how he knew, how he should have stepped aside. I think part of him was relieved, Regina. I think he realized he was not ready to replace Dorothy, that he had been trying to force something that was not there. And I think he wanted us to be happy, even if it cost him." "How can we be happy now?" Regina asked. "How can we build anything on this foundation?" Grayson finally looked at her fully. "I do not know, but I also know Marcus would not want us to waste the gift he gave us. He died so I could live, Regina. And his last words were telling us to be together, to love each other. Honoring that seems more important than wallowing in guilt." "I do not know if I can," Regina whispered. "Then we will figure it out together," Grayson said. He held out his hand. "If you want to, if you can forgive me for dragging you into this mess." Regina looked at his outstretched hand, thinking of everything that had happened, everything that had brought her to this moment. She thought of Marcus's words, "Take care of him, be happy." She thought of the way Grayson had looked at her by the creek, the love in his eyes despite knowing it was hopeless. She took his hand. The weeks that followed were difficult. The town was grieving Marcus, and Regina and Grayson had to be careful about how they were seen together. Too much too soon would look disrespectful and would fuel gossip. The town council appointed Grayson as the new sheriff, recognizing his capability and Marcus's implicit endorsement. Grayson accepted the position with humility, vowing to honor Marcus's legacy. Regina continued to stay at the boarding house, helping Adelaide and trying to find her place in a town where she was no longer the mail-order bride, no longer the almost widow, but simply herself. It was Adelaide who finally pushed them together. 6 weeks after the funeral, she invited Grayson to dinner at the boarding house and seated him next to Regina. "Over pot roast and potatoes," she said bluntly. "Marcus wanted you two together. The whole town knows it because half of them were there when he said it. You are both young, you care for each other, and life is too short to waste on false propriety. Start courting properly with my chaperoning, and when enough time has passed that it will not seem indecent, get married. Marcus would approve." Grayson and Regina looked at each other across the table. Slowly, Grayson smiled. It was the first real smile Regina had seen from him since before the shooting. "Would you do me the honor of allowing me to court you, Regina Ellsworth?" he asked formally. "I would be delighted, Sheriff Turner," Regina said, and felt herself smile in return. They courted through the summer and into the fall, taking walks together with Adelaide trailing behind as chaperone. They attended church socials and town dances. Grayson brought Regina wildflowers from the prairie and took her riding to see the sunset paint the Texas sky in brilliant colors. Slowly, carefully, they built something real. Regina learned that Grayson loved to read and had a surprisingly well-stocked collection of books in his room above the jail. Grayson discovered that Regina had a talent for drawing and encouraged her to sketch the landscape around Dalhart. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, learning each other's stories, dreams, and fears. And slowly, the guilt began to ease. They visited Marcus's grave together once a week, bringing flowers and telling him about their lives. Regina liked to think he approved. In October, Grayson proposed. They were at the creek, their special place, watching the cottonwood leaves turn gold. He got down on one knee and pulled out a simple gold band. "Regina, I love you. I have loved you since the day you stepped off that stagecoach, though I had no right to. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building the home and family you came to Dalhart looking for. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Regina said through happy tears. "Yes, Grayson, I will." They married in November, a quiet ceremony with just close friends attending. Regina wore a dress of deep green that brought out her eyes, and Grayson wore a new suit. Reverend Walsh officiated, smiling as he pronounced them husband and wife. This time, when Grayson kissed his bride, there was no hesitation, no guilt, only joy. They moved into Marcus's old house, which Grayson had inherited along with the position of sheriff. Regina planted new flowers in the boxes, bright, cheerful blooms to replace the dead stalks of Dorothy's long-ago garden. She made curtains for the windows and cooked meals in the kitchen, and slowly transformed the house into a home. Their first winter together was cold but happy. Regina discovered she was pregnant in January of 1879, and Grayson was beside himself with excitement and terror. He fussed over her constantly, insisting she rest, bringing her tea, reading to her in the evenings. Their son was born in September, a healthy boy with his father's green eyes and his mother's auburn hair. They named him Marcus Grayson Turner, after the man whose sacrifice had made their happiness possible. Life in Dalhart settled into a peaceful rhythm. Grayson proved to be an excellent sheriff, fair and respected. Regina became known for her kindness, helping new families settle in town, teaching children to read at the schoolhouse when Miss Carter needed assistance. They had 2 more children in the years that followed. A daughter named Adelaide in 1881, after the woman who had championed their love, and another son named Thomas in 1883. Grayson was a devoted father, teaching his sons to ride and shoot, reading stories to his daughter, playing with all of them on the floor despite Regina's laughing protests that he would spoil them rotten. "They are children," he would say. "They are supposed to be spoiled with love." Regina had found what she had traveled across the country seeking: a home, a family, people who loved her. It had not come the way she expected, and the path had been painful, but looking at Grayson playing with their children in the yard, hearing their laughter ring through the house, she knew it had been worth it. On a Sunday afternoon in the spring of 1885, Regina and Grayson visited Marcus's grave together, as they still did regularly. The children were with Adelaide for the afternoon, giving them some rare time alone. They sat in the grass beside the headstone, Regina leaning against Grayson's shoulder. The cemetery was peaceful, birds singing in the trees, wildflowers blooming between the graves. "You ever regret it?" Regina asked quietly. "The way things happened, regret us?" "Never," Grayson said firmly. "Do I wish Marcus had lived? Of course, every day. He was a good man and a good friend, and he deserved a long, happy life. But I cannot regret the life we have built together, Regina. I cannot regret our children or our love. That would dishonor his sacrifice." "I think he would be happy for us," Regina said. "I think he would love seeing what we have created." "I think so too." Grayson pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "We named our son after him. We keep his memory alive. We live the life he wanted us to have. That is all we can do." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, then Grayson said, "I never told you what Marcus said to me the day before he died, before the wedding." Regina looked up at him. "What did he say?" "He came to the jail and told me to stop avoiding you. He said he knew how I felt, that he was not blind. And he said he was going through with the marriage anyway because he had made a commitment, and so had you. But he also said he hoped I would find someone someday who loved me the way you and I loved each other, because everyone deserved that kind of love at least once in their life." Regina felt tears prick her eyes. "He was giving us his blessing even then." "He was. I think he knew, even before the shooting, that he and you would not work. I think when he pushed me out of the way of that bullet, he was not just saving my life. He was freeing you both from an obligation that would have made you miserable." "Do you really believe that?" Regina asked. "I do," Grayson said. "And I think the best way we can honor him is to be happy, to love each other and our children, to build a good life here in the town he protected." Regina nodded, wiping her eyes. "Then that is what we will do." As they walked back to town hand in hand, the sun warm on their faces, Regina thought about how strange life was. She had come to Dalhart as a desperate woman seeking security, expecting to marry a man she did not love. Instead, she had found genuine love with a good man, had built a family and a home, had discovered happiness she had never dared to dream of. The path had been painful and marked by tragedy, but it had also been marked by love, sacrifice, and the kind of devotion that made life worth living. That evening, Grayson read to the children before bed, his deep voice bringing the story to life. Regina stood in the doorway, watching her family, her heart full. Little Marcus was already drowsy, his thumb in his mouth. Adelaide was fighting sleep, determined to hear the end of the story. Baby Thomas was already asleep in his cradle. After the children were settled, Grayson and Regina sat on their porch in the twilight, watching fireflies dance in the warm air. Grayson had his arm around her shoulders, and Regina rested her hand on his knee. "I love you," she said softly. "I do not say it enough." "You say it every day," Grayson replied, "in 1,000 little ways, but I never get tired of hearing the words, 'I love you too, Regina,' more than I can ever properly express." They sat together in the gathering darkness, at peace with their past and grateful for their present, looking forward to whatever future lay ahead. The years continued to pass, bringing the joys and sorrows that make up any life. There were more children, twin girls, Rose and Ruth, born in 1887. There were hard times when drought threatened the ranches and disease swept through the cattle. There were good times when the railroad finally came to Dalhart in 1890, bringing new prosperity to the town. Through it all, Grayson and Regina faced everything together, their love deepening with each passing year. They raised their children with love and discipline, teaching them the values of hard work, honesty, and compassion. As the children grew, they heard the story of how their parents met, told carefully and honestly. They learned about Sheriff Marcus Thompson, the hero who had saved their father's life and made their family possible. They visited his grave and laid flowers there, understanding that their happiness had been bought at a price. Young Marcus, the eldest, inherited his namesake's sense of justice and eventually became a lawyer, moving to Austin but visiting home regularly. Adelaide grew into a lovely, compassionate woman who became a teacher and married a local rancher. Thomas took over as Dalhart's sheriff when Grayson retired in 1895, carrying on the tradition of service. The twins, Rose and Ruth, were inseparable and both married brothers who owned the expanded general store. In 1898, on their 20th wedding anniversary, Grayson took Regina back to the creek, where they had first acknowledged their feelings for each other. They were older now, graying and lined, but the love in Grayson's eyes when he looked at his wife was unchanged. 20 years, he said wonderingly. It has gone so fast. And yet it feels like I have known you forever, Regina said. Like my life before Dalhart was someone else's story. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had actually married Marcus that day? Grayson asked. If the robbery had not interrupted the ceremony, Regina considered. Sometimes, I think I would have gone through with it. I was so determined to honor my commitment, so convinced that duty mattered more than love. And I think I would have been miserable, and so would Marcus. We both would have been trapped in a loveless marriage, going through the motions. The robbery, as terrible as it was, freed us both. I used to feel guilty about that, Grayson admitted. About being glad Marcus died because it meant I could have you. But I have come to understand that it is possible to grieve someone and still be grateful for the unexpected blessings that came from their loss. Marcus understood that, Regina said. Remember what he said, be happy. That was his gift to us and we have honored it. We have been happy, Grayson, so very happy. The happiest, Grayson agreed. He pulled her close and kissed her. The same tenderness and passion present after 20 years as had been there from the beginning. They stayed at the creek until the stars came out, talking about their children and grandchildren, remembering the journey that had brought them together, making plans for the years still ahead. As the new century approached, Dalhart continued to grow and change. The wild frontier town where Regina had stepped off a stagecoach in 1878 was now a thriving community with paved streets, electric lights, and all the modern conveniences. But some things remained constant. The big Texas sky, the sense of community, the value placed on hard work and integrity. Grayson and Regina grew old together, surrounded by their children and grandchildren. They never forgot Marcus Thompson or the debt they owed him. A plaque was erected in the town square in his memory, commemorating his years of service and his heroic death. Every year on the anniversary of the bank robbery, Dalhart held a memorial service, and Grayson and Regina always attended, no matter how advanced in years they became. In the spring of 1910, at the age of 54, Regina fell ill with pneumonia. Despite the best efforts of the doctor, her condition worsened. On a warm April evening, surrounded by her family, she took her last breaths. Grayson held her hand, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I will see you again," he whispered. "Wait for me." Regina smiled weakly. "Always," she managed. "I will always wait for you. Thank you for the most beautiful life, Grayson. Thank you for loving me." "Loving you was the easiest thing I ever did," Grayson said. "It was my privilege and my joy." She died peacefully, with Grayson's hand in hers and her children gathered around her. She was buried in the Dalhart Cemetery, and though Grayson was offered a plot in the newer section of the cemetery, he insisted on being buried next to Marcus Thompson when his time came. "They are both part of my story," he told his children. "Marcus gave me the life I have had with your mother. It is only right that we should all rest together." Grayson lived another 5 years without Regina, and though he remained active and engaged with his family, everyone could see that part of him had died with his beloved wife. He visited her grave daily, sitting on the bench he had installed there, telling her about their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, reminiscing about their life together. In the summer of 1915, at the age of 62, Grayson passed away peacefully in his sleep. His children found him in the morning, a smile on his face, Regina's picture clutched in his hand. He was buried next to Regina, with Marcus on her other side, the three of them finally at rest. At the funeral, the eldest grandson read a letter Grayson had written to be opened after his death. It read, "To my beloved children and grandchildren, When you visit our graves and see three stones side by side, remember that love is complicated and life is unexpected. Remember that sometimes the greatest blessings come from the deepest tragedies. Remember that Marcus Thompson was a hero not just because he died protecting others, but because he recognized love when he saw it and was generous enough to bless it, even at cost to himself. Remember that your mother and I loved each other with everything we had, every day of our lives together, and that love is what made everything possible. Honor us by loving as deeply and living as fully as we did. That is all we ever wanted for you. The years passed, and Dalhart continued to grow and change. The story of the sheriff, his deputy, and the mail-order bride became part of the town's folklore, passed down through generations. The three graves side by side in the cemetery became something of a landmark, a testament to love, sacrifice, and the complicated beauty of human relationships. And on spring evenings, when the fireflies danced and the air was sweet with the scent of wildflowers, people would sometimes see young couples walking hand in hand past the three graves, pausing to read the inscriptions, perhaps learning something about the enduring power of love. Marcus Thompson's stone read, "Sheriff, hero, friend, he gave everything so others might live." Regina Turner's stone read, "Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she traveled far to find home and love." And Grayson Turner's stone read, "Sheriff, husband, father." He lived every day grateful for the gift of love. Together, they told a story of the Wild West, of mail-order brides and frontier justice, of love found in unexpected places and happiness built on the foundation of sacrifice. They told a story of real people who lived and loved and made the best of what life gave them. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy of all, not perfection but genuine love. Not an easy path, but a path walked together. Not a fairy tale, but something better. A real love story with all its complications and sorrows and joys that endured beyond death and became part of the eternal story of human hearts seeking connection, finding love, and building something that mattered. The sun set over Dalhart, painting the Texas sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, just as it had on that day in 1878 when a young woman named Regina Ellsworth had stepped off a stagecoach and into a destiny she could never have imagined. And three graves stood silent sentinel to the truth that love, real love, never truly dies but echoes on through the generations, inspiring and uplifting all who hear its story.